All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Our friend KLV, or maybe it's 155, I'm not sure, in Roman numerals, asked, why is it that Jewish men are required to wear tefillin and tallis, while the Jewish women are not obligated in these things? They're exempt from this obligation. Which it's connected. Last week's parsha spoke about the tallis, the tzitzis, and this week's medrash starts talking about tallis and tzitzis. So it's in Yana Dioma, as we say. It's a timely question. So there are several reasons for this, which we'll get into now. So first of all, there's a concept in Judaism. We have positive commandments and negative commandments. Mitzvos aseh and mitzvos lo aseh. So a positive commandment means a thou shalt, and a negative commandment means thou shalt not. Meaning a negative commandment is a sin, and the positive commandment is a good deed. So all the negative commandments pretty much apply equally to men and women, as long as they are. Obviously, we're talking about things that apply to both men and women. So not all the negative commandments apply to women, because certain only apply to men and certainly apply to women. But those that are just plain, and they're not specific to a man or to a woman, obviously, we're talking about you're not allowed to shave your beard with a straight razor. You're allowed to cut the beard. So the electric razors that people use today are kosher, as long as it's not a lift and cut that actually works as a straight razor. But the Hasidim are strict that we don't even cut with the scissor. But the actual commandment, the negative commandment, is that we cannot shave with a straight razor. So obviously women don't typically grow beards unless there's some kind of a hormonal issue. And so therefore, the prohibition of shaving the beard, and for that matter the payas also, that applies only to men and not to women. Things like that. The priesthood really only applies to men, and so therefore the law that a priest is not allowed to enter a cemetery, become impure with contact with dead bodies, that only applies to men. It doesn't apply to a daughter of a priest or to the wife of a priest, even though a single daughter of a priest or a wife of a priest does share in certain priestly aspects of their life, but not as far as this of the prohibition against being mitamal mason, against being defiled by contact with dead bodies. So it's not exactly true to say that all the negative commandments apply equally to men and women, but for the most part, the negative commandments, for example, a negative commandment such as you're not allowed to eat non-kosher food, that applies equally to men and women, right? So that's what we have. So those apply equally to men and women. The positive commandments, we say like this: if it's a time-bound positive commandment that is not directly linked to a negative commandment, so then only men are obligated and women are exempt. So the time-bound commandments, for example, that are connected to negative commandments, that has both a negative and positive aspect, women are obligated. So for example, the Sabbath has both positive and negative. We would say, in a certain sense, in the Ten Commandments, there are two different versions. There's one in Exodus and one in Deuteronomy. So in Exodus it says, remember the Sabbath day, which is a positive commandment. And in Deuteronomy it says, keep the Sabbath, which we can understand in the negative sense of, not violating the Sabbath, not desecrating the Sabbath, although there are other places where it prohibits desecrating the Sabbath, but we're just saying this more or less in a colloquial sense, So we understand remembering the Sabbath means the Kiddush, the prayer liturgy that's specifically connected to the Sabbath. So Kiddush means Friday night, before we eat, we have to recite a blessing, usually over a cup of wine. You could say there are other ways to say it, the grape juice, challah, things like that, bread, but generally it's done over a cup of wine. Similarly, Shabbos day, rabbinically speaking, we say a blessing, and Saturday night, the Havdalah. It's a question whether or not that applies to women. Although generally understood it is, although the question is how strong is the obligation and what are the consequences of the obligation, which, again, that's not the question here, so it's not time to get into it. But essentially what we're saying, though, is that because remembering the Sabbath is linked to keeping the Sabbath, and since women are obligated to keep the Sabbath, women are prohibited from violating the Sabbath, they are thereby obligated to remember the Sabbath, and remembering the Sabbath is done through the recitation of Kiddush. So either a woman has to either recite the Kiddush or hear Kiddush from someone else, and which generally the husband will be the one making the Kiddush for his wife or for his daughters, but a woman who's all by herself, or it's just a group of women, one woman could make for the others. There's nothing wrong with that. This holder here is acting strange. Anyway, then you have time-bound commandments. Another example that women are obligated is the Passover Seder. Pretty much the whole Passover Seder is something that both men and women are obligated in equally, which includes the Kiddush, but also eating matzah and the Haggadah, the story, telling over the story of the Exodus, the 4 cups, the Maror, and in the old days, the Korban Pesach itself, the Paschal sacrifice. There are certain times when time-bound mitzvahs, women are specifically mentioned, like Hakel. In the book of Deuteronomy, it mentions that the king is supposed to read from the book of Deuteronomy once every 7 years, and it mentions specifically that men, women, and children are obligated to attend this gathering of listening to the king read from the Torah. But then you have the time-bound commandments that women are exempt from, which would include the Tefillin and the Tallis, which are daytime mitzvos. They're not mitzvos at night. Even though one could wear tzitzis at night, we say that he should not put them on with the blessing at night. And so the Tallis, for example, we wouldn't put on a Tallis at night under most circumstances, and if we do, we don't say a blessing over it. And Tefillin, we tend to avoid wearing altogether at night and only wear during the day, and so too we only wear Tefillin on weekdays and not on the Sabbath. And so since it's time bound, meaning there's certain times when we do this mitzvah and certain times when we do not do the mitzvah, so that is a mitzvah that women are exempt from. But the truth is there are other time bound mitzvahs that women are exempt from that women still elect to fulfill. For example, as particularly among the Ashkenazic communities, women will generally elect to eat in a sukkah, and they could say the bracha leishav b'sukkah, even though they're not obligated to do so, they're allowed to do so. Similarly, also on the holiday of Sukkot, on the Feast of Tabernacles, they'll take the lulav, the 4 species, the palm branch with the citron, with the estrich, and the myrtles and the willows, the hadassim and the ravos, the 4 species that we take on this holiday of Sukkot. Women are exempt from that, and yet many women will choose to fulfill that mitzvah, and according to Ashkenazic tradition, they even say a bracha on it. And there's similar other mitzvahs like that the women are exempt from, The shofar on Rosh Hashanah, another example. Women do not have to hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, but they fulfill a mitzvah when they do so. And the custom is that the women hear the shofar, even to the point if they can't make it to the synagogue. A lot of times you'll have men come and sound the shofar for them, and usually the woman will make her own bracha for that. So we do see that women are allowed to perform time-bound positive mitzvahs, even though they're exempt from doing so. So why is it that in the Orthodox communities, for the most part, women do not wear tzitzis and do not wear tefillin? So there are two reasons for this. One is that there's an understanding based on the Targum, which is not really a binding halachic source, but it's understood as such, that when it says that a man should not wear women's clothes and a woman should not wear man's clothes, one of the Targumim, I think it's Targum Yonason, might be Targum Yerushalmi, I don't remember offhand, putting me on the spot, sorry, where it says that a man's clothing would include the Tallis and Tefillin. And so therefore, it would be a prohibition for a woman to wear Tallis and Tefillin. Because these are specifically men's garments. That's not considered to be a halachically binding source, but it's something to have in mind, and it's a valid opinion at the very least. I wouldn't say that it's enough to prohibit it, but it's something that should be taken into consideration as to why we avoid doing that. With that being said, though, the truth is that yes, the tallis that men wear is a man's garment. But theoretically, if you would make, I don't know, like a pink tallis with flowers on it, even I see some men have tallisim like that, a woman could theoretically wear such a tallis and attach tzitzis to it, and so therefore I encourage people who are not part of the Orthodox community that they want to wear these garments should at least take that into consideration. They do make actually talisim that are specifically for women, and that if a woman wants to do this mitzvah of tzitzis, wear talis, she should at the very least wear one that's, if that's what, and she's in a community where that's something that might be practiced, maybe she attends a conservative temple or something like that, or a reform temple, I would recommend that if you're going to do that, to at least wear a tallis that's specifically for women and not wear a men's tallis, because of this prohibition of wearing men's garments. That would be my recommendation. But with that being said, if it's made halachically the way a tallis is made, and it's a garment that would be obligated in tzitzis, if it were a man's garment, and you're putting on during the daytime, for an Ashkenazi woman, there'd technically be nothing wrong with the woman putting it on. It's just it's not our custom, and the I believe it's the Magen Avram says it's mechzik kuyura, that it's an arrogant thing for a woman to do because it's not customary. So, meaning if a woman meaning even if a woman wears a garment that has four corners, she's not obligated to place tzitzis on it. Meaning if a man would wear a garment that contains four corners, he's mevatel mitzvahs aseh. He's nullifying a positive commandment. So it's pretty much like he's doing a sin if he doesn't have tzitzis on this garment. Although there are certain conditions where it could be overlooked. Shabbos, and a person's embarrassed that, and the tzitzis are possible, things like that. But in general, it's considered it's better not to wear the four-cornered garment than to wear a four-cornered garment that has no tzitzis on it, or that has improper tzitzis. Let's say the tzitzis are invalid for whatever reason. Because it's pretty much like a sin. It's considered, it's a nullification of a positive commandment. But for a woman, it's not a nullification. A woman is allowed to wear a woman's garment with 4 corners without placing tzitzis on it, there's no need for her to do so. But if she wanted to do so, she would fulfill a mitzvah. But like we said, I believe it's the Magen Avram, although I could be wrong, who says that it's mechzik yura. It appears arrogant to do so, and so that's why the custom is not to. But again, that would be, I would say that would be based on the local custom. Meaning, if you're part of a community where women do not wear tzitzis, which is the vast majority of Orthodox communities, it would be mechzik yura. It would be seemingly arrogant, and it should be avoided for that reason. As opposed to if you're, I would say, if you're a member of a conservative community where the women do wear a talit, they do wear a prayer shawl. While there are many issues that we have with this movement, and even more issues with the Reform movement, we have to be intellectually honest when we're dealing with an issue that's not an issue. And there are certain things that are only an issue because it's an issue in a particular community. Same thing as, according to some Orthodox poskim, about women covering their hair and so forth. Or even wearing pants and so forth. That these are issues that are more based on the community and the standards of the community. So if you go to Kiryas Joel or to Williamsburg, a married woman with pants and with her hair uncovered, she's committing a sin, because by the standards of that community, it's a sin. But if you live, I know now Teaneck, everyone covers their hair too, most people. But Amol is Gavain that they didn't. But certain more modern Orthodox communities where women wear pants and women don't cover their hair, the truth is, according to some poskim, it's pretty much going by the standards of that community, notwithstanding that there are other issues involved with it. But if it's more or less that's the standards of the community, there's what to discuss to say that it's not the worst thing in the world. I wouldn't say it's permitted necessarily, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Kind of the way I would more phrase it. And I guess and if you following one of these poskim, it's Rav Mishash, but he didn't say that a woman doesn't have to cover her hair. He's just really being Malamed Schus on the women who weren't covering their hair. He's surprised in Morocco, that he's writing that, but because of the French influence that came in there, more than, because you would think with the Muslim influence, even the single Muslim girls cover their hair and their necks and their elbows and everything. And you would think we should be holding ourselves to a higher standard, but unfortunately, already in that time, the French influence was so strong that Jewish women weren't covering their hair in these communities, and even in Eastern Europe and so forth. It's well known that the Satmarov is very against sheitlach. He's very against women wearing wigs, and he felt that a kerchief, a tichel, is more appropriate. But it would depend who was he speaking to. When he spoke in the Hasidic synagogue, and a lot of women started wearing wigs, he would say what a sin it is to wear a wig, because they were going against the traditions of their mothers who wore tichlach, who wore a kerchief, but a scarf, but a headscarf. But when he spoke in the non-Hasidic synagogue, the main synagogue in Satu Mare, he would say what a mitzvah is to wear sheitel, because a lot of women were going with their hair uncovered. Meaning even in Hungary in those days, Romania in those days. So similarly, I would say that if you're part of a conservative congregation where you might, and that's where you go. Maybe there's no other synagogue around you, and many other reasons perhaps, and the synagogue subscribes to the 13 principles of faith, meaning They might be Orthodox if they're not Orthoprax, and things like that. I would say that if that's the standards of that community, it's not Mexikiura. It doesn't appear to be arrogant because that's what everybody's doing. But still, you have the problem of those silbash, the problem of cross-dressing, which is a sin, and so therefore, if a woman does want to wear a tallis, a prayer shawl, she should wear one that's specifically made for women and not one that's made for men. There's not really such a thing as a unisex prayer shawl. At least, again, that could be going by the standards of the community, and if you can make that argument, but I would still say hamachmir tavel of bracha, someone who's strict, will be blessed in this manner. So that's pretty much the answer with the tallis. It's not an obligation, but if we're still recording, yes. If the woman would want to, she's technically not doing anything wrong. It's just not customary to do so, because it was never done. So like even my mother's not a Shomer Shabbos, but she grew up going to Orthodox Shul. She would never put on a tallis. That wouldn't cross her mind to do such a thing because that's not how she was raised. Because she was raised in an Orthodox home. And when it comes to tefillin, so then and I believe that there was the Meidel from Ludmir was who she would fear zich like a Hasidic Rebbe, even though she was a maiden. She was unmarried, and she wasn't a Rebbitzin, but she was. And I understand some of the Rebbitzins did such a thing in the early days, but she was conducting herself like she conducted a small Hasidic court, where she took kvitlach and feared a tish like a Rebbe. And I believe the story goes that she wore Tallis and Tefillin, or at least Tefillin. I don't know. And then the legend goes that Rashi's daughters wore Tefillin. If I remember, someone asked Rabbi Beryl Wine about this, who's a big historian. He said he never saw any valid historical source to back up this claim. So now we get to the tefillin. Now tefillin is a bigger issue, meaning for a woman to wear a tallis, as long as it's a tallis made specifically for a woman, there's technically nothing wrong with it, except that it's considered arrogant, and we could say that it's arrogant in a community where the custom is for a woman not to do such a thing, and so therefore that's why in the Orthodox communities we don't do it because we don't do it. And that's it. It's not done because it's not done, and that's a good enough reason. The same thing, my holy Zayda, the Chavos Yor, they asked him, the famous tshuva, about women saying Kaddish. A man has only daughters and no sons. Could the daughters say Kaddish? And he said no, because it's not done, and that's a good enough reason. We just do it. It's never been done this way. We're not going to change it, even though technically there might be nothing wrong with it. We don't do it. As opposed to, I know Rav Soloveitchik said that he remembers when he was a bacher in Brisk, or a Yingala in Brisk, he could hear the women from the Ezras Nashim, from the Weiber Shiel, saying Kaddish. So I guess maybe in Lithuania they did, I don't know. But in Germany they didn't. And with that being said, there is a story, is Meiser Rav, I guess. Even Meiser Rav, it doesn't make that much sense to me, but the story goes was that a woman came to Rabbi Soloveitchik saying that she wanted to wear a tallis, and he said you could wear a tallis with no tzitzis. And he asked her, well, so what's? She started doing it, and he asked her about it, and she said, how incredibly spiritual it felt to put on the tallis, and he said, yeah, but there's no mitzvah to wear a tallis without tzitzis, so you're not doing anything. I don't understand how he permitted such a thing, though, because it would seem it was probably a man's tallis, which would be Isser V'lo Silbash. So I guess he didn't consider that to be, I guess according to Rav Soloveitchik, that wouldn't be an issue, but still he didn't want women to wear talisa. But again, there's so many, it's amazing, someone who lived so recently, what did he pass away, 25 years ago? And yet there's so many apocryphal stories about Rabbi Soloveitchik we don't really know. From every one of his students, you're going to have a different picture. This one's going to paint him as very modern, and this one's going to paint him as ultra-Orthodox. This one's going to paint him as an extreme Zionist. This one might even paint him as anti-Zionist, which would be far-fetched to say he's anti-Zionist. But I remember my Rosh Yeshiva was a student of Rav Soloveitchik, in front of the two chief rabbis of Israel. Nonetheless, there was a conference in Washington, D.C., and he said, my Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Ber is nicht gewähnt kein Zioni, is gewähnt an Ehrlich Yid. He said that Rabbi Soloveitchik, he wasn't a Zionist, he was gewähnt a Voile Yid. He was a pious, good Jew. Is nicht gewähnt kein Zioni. That's what he said. He should be well, Shef for Shleimer Rababa. So anyway, when it comes to tefillin, it's a much more serious issue. Because the truth is, men should wear tefillin all day. Why don't we do so? There's several reasons why. One of which is that you have to have a clean mind for tefillin, which the women should have no problem with that. Rabbi Fishbane, he always says this. I heard it on an earlier recording, Davar B'Shem Aimer from Bishop Fulton Sheen, and I'm sure it's an older joke than that a woman's mind tends to be cleaner than a man's because she's always changing it. And I said to my wife, maybe that's not so nice. She said, no, it's okay. And my wife's a feminist, and still she said it's okay for me. And not like she's a first-wave feminist. So, which she said all the Hasidic women are first-wave feminists, and because they're embracing their femininity. And she said it's not. She's not offended by it. It says it's okay to say that joke. So I have her shus. So therefore, a woman should be able to wear tefillin because she has a clean mind. You also have to have gufnak. You have to have a clean body. That includes. So, for example, you'll excuse me. Torah lo nitna l'malachei Yesharis. We have such a statement that the Torah wasn't given to the ministering angels. So we have to recognize the bodily functions of a human being. You're not allowed. The reason why we're not allowed to wear tefillin at night is because we're afraid you might fall asleep. You're not allowed to wear tefillin while you're asleep. So if you're going to doze off, even during the day, you have to take your tefillin off. And when it comes to the tefillin, the reason they're afraid that if you fall asleep wearing tefillin, you might have flatulence, and you're not allowed to have flatulence with tefillin on. So, but men and women have flatulence equally, as much as some people want to deny that. It shouldn't be an issue between men or women, but the thing is a man is obligated to wear tefillin and a woman is not. We've established that a woman is not obligated. So a man only wears it briefly, relatively speaking. Instead of wearing it all day, you're going to wear it maybe for a half hour, 40 minutes, an hour tops. Most men are not going to be wearing tefillin more than an hour a day. And then certain people, they're going to wear tefillin all day, but then you have to be careful to have a clean mind, to have a clean body. And so for that's a simple enough reason to say that since a woman is not obligated, a woman wearing tefillin it would be like the equivalent of a man wearing tefillin all day. Meaning a man wears tefillin when he prays, and that's it. And then he takes it off because he's fulfilled his obligation. But a woman doesn't have an obligation at all, so it would be the equivalent of a man wearing wearing the tefillin all day. So that's enough for a reason. And then the other reason, now a woman who is impure, nida, that's not a reason not to wear tefillin, meaning when she's in her clean days, but she hasn't gone to the mikveh yet, or a girl who doesn't go to the mikveh at all. There's nothing wrong with, because she's in the state of impurity of nida, to put on tefillin. But if she's actually having her cycle, she actually has the flow at the time, it would most likely, although there's some machlokas, not everybody agrees, but most likely that would be also a violation of nikiyas haguf, of the cleanliness of the body, and therefore at that time, when she actually has the flow, she should not wear tefillin. And because she has no control of it when that will start, it's something that just happens. It's not something like, as opposed to, you have generally, you're going to have control over most other bodily functions, and if for some reason you don't have control, a man can't control his bowels, he can't put on tefillin. Or, if he can maybe hold himself clean for 10 minutes, he puts on for a minute, takes off, and does the mitzvah, and that's it. But if, let's say, he's going a few days, he has a stomach issue, he can't put on tefillin. So along those lines, because a woman doesn't have the control over her body as to when she's going to have a flow, that's significant enough of a reason why a woman might want to avoid putting on tefillin, because lest she come to wear the tefillin without a clean body and therefore be desecrating the tefillin. Again, it's not an issue of tum and tahara, but of actual bodily cleanliness, just like we said, like going to the bathroom. And a similar thing, if a man has some kind of an issue with the seminal flow, would also have to be, and he has no control over it for some reason, some kind of an illness, like gonorrhea, something like that, would also be, God forbid, that would only azov, would seem that would also be that a reason for a man not to put on tefillin, or to put on tefillin, make sure he's clean, and put on the tefillin very briefly. So that's pretty much the answer there. I know it's an uncomfortable subject, but that's pretty much the story that we have here. Is that a woman could attach tzitzis. So this is the way I understand it. A woman could attach tzitzis to a woman's garment, but the custom is not to. And a woman should not wear tefillin unless there's some very rare circumstances. However, the truth is, like we said, there are certain communities, conservative and even some of the liberal Orthodox, where women do wear tefillin, and I would recommend to at least be mater neder, although I don't think that's even necessary, because it's not. It's probably you're probably doing a better thing not wearing tefillin, so it's not even something you would need to be mater neder for, that you need to be released from a vow, because you're not really doing something that's good. You're doing a mitzvah, but you're doing a better thing by not wearing tefillin. And then according to the I forget if it was the Targum Yerushalmi or the Targum Yonasan, it goes even more that it's considered a man's garment, even though tefillin are not really a garment, but really weapons are also not a garment. So, and weapons are mentioned as a man's garment. That a woman is prohibited from carrying in a similar way, and so there might be that consideration as well as a reason why a woman should not be wearing the tefillin, and it would seem maybe even tzitzis on a woman's garment. Oh, don't have room to get out here. There might be also something to say that it's problematic, even on a woman's garment for that reason, although that's a little bit more difficult to say. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later. And I'm sorry if I offended anybody. I didn't mean to offend anybody. I remember, I'll tell you one story, Maisa Shahoya. I was in Kiryas Joel, and there was a girl wearing tzitzis, a tallis coating on top of her clothes. Nobody said anything to her. It was in the supermarket. I think it was Landau Supermarket or Grand Food Market. I don't remember. And nobody said a word to her. Nobody, even though it's something that's anathema in that community, everybody respected her, because for the most part, the Satmar community, they don't care what other people do, And I guess maybe, and also they're probably educated enough to know that it's not really a problem. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later.